With a little practice, you'll get pretty comfortable interpreting a single curve and how that affects the motion of an object. However, very few objects move in only one direction at a time. So for example, we have this box which is currently animating back and forth diagonally on our screen. The way to think about this is like an Etch-a-Sketch. To draw a straight line up and down, you only have to turn one knob of an Etch-a-Sketch. To draw a line side to side, you have to turn the other knob. But to get a diagonal line, you need to turn both knobs at the same time, meaning you're changing both the side to side and the up and down values simultaneously. That's what's happening here as well. I have animation on my translate X and my translate Y curve. And you'll see that my translate X is my side to side motion and my translate Y is my up and down motion. When those two motions change at the same time, we are getting a consistent transition in a diagonal axis. Let's go ahead and put a motion trail on this just so we can look at it. Visualize, create editable motion trail, and you'll see that currently this object is traveling in a perfectly diagonal line. And that is because both of these curves are transitioning 10 units and 10 units. If I just adjusted the up position of my translate X, you'll see that curve changes. I'll undo that. Now let's look what happens if I were to go through here and select all of the bottom keyframes of my translate X and set those to linear. Now my path looks like this. If I adjusted those tangents even more, you would start to see that I'm getting a much more exaggerated version of that curve. Now the reason this is happening is because the translate X, or the side-to-side motion, has a bigger spacing at the first. So you see that the movement forward is pretty big in those first few keyframes. However, the movement up and down is pretty small because we're easing out. I can amplify that by doing the same thing to the top curves of my translate Y. And so now you see we get these objects transitioning in a pretty smooth arc. The difficulty becomes interpreting how each of these curves will affect the overall path of the object. So if I go back to auto tangents and I set all of my translate X to linear, you'll see that now I get an interesting S curve.